So we're back again, Jordan. It's good to see you. Not for sure. We've had some discussion about what we're going to do today. We're not going to go over game of the week this week. You've got some stuff you have to do. I'll be attending, of course, the Bradley Lincoln Way Central game. I think we talk a little bit about maybe last week what you experienced, and then this week what I've experienced being at Bradley, and then kind of going into our game next week. So, why don't you talk a little bit about what happened last week, kind of some of the stuff that you were able to see both either live or if you weren't able to make a live game, kind of what you've seen by going through. I think you take the time to watch some of those games that remain up on the network, and you're able to kind of view them, look at players, make some evaluations, and kind of come up with kind of key players. So talk a little bit about that and what you went through last week.
Yeah, so last week I ended up going out to Joliet Memorial Stadium to watch Joliet Catholic Academy take on Crete-Monee. We have Joliet Catholic ranked as number 3 state in the whole entire team, and Crete-Monee at the time was ranked number 28. It was a really great game. You know, you have playmakers on both sides of the ball. You have, University of Illinois commits for JCA. You have guys on Crete-Monee with Division I offers. So it was a great game going back and forth. Turnovers really hurt Crete-Monee though. It was going 7-7, 7-14, and then next thing you know, Crete-Monee throws a pick six, another interception that JCA capitalizes on a touchdown, and they ended up having a fumble that Joliet Catholic returned for another touchdown, and they found themselves down 35-7 midway through the third quarter. But that might have all happened, but Crete-Monee can score like that. They ended up coming back middle of the third quarter, making this comeback run, and ended up bringing the score up to it was 35-27 at one point. And the game ended up being 41 to 27. But you take away those turnovers, Crete's pretty much in that game can almost beat that team. So Crete's going to be a team, moving forward where they might have turnovers here and there, but if you're not careful, they have playmakers at every position on the offensive side of the ball. Joliet Catholic, they were without their star running back, Jordan Anderson. He's a University of Illinois commit. He's out with an injury, so they had a young man, Vinny Iannatone, who, in my eyes, is just as good as Jordan Anderson is. He's just a little smaller, if that makes sense. He dominated that game. He got most of the carries. I think he scored maybe 3 or 4 touchdowns on the night. Downhill runner, he gets after it. It was a great game overall, and I was really impressed with both of those teams.
Yeah, so it kind of sounds a little bit about like what we've been able to do with last week's game. You talk a little bit about kind of being in the game, and then for one team, there's like a particular play, right, or a particular period that things change dramatically. And you kind of jumping into our game against Homewood Flossmoor. Homewood Flossmoor always puts, and I always say this, and no disrespect to the players or the coaches, but put good product on the field. They're always a powerhouse 8A team, and they come to play every game. This game was no different. The difference is I think they're on the way up, right? So, I kind of reached out to some guys, Big Pete and stuff, asked them what their thoughts were, and they kind of thought the same thing. They're young. They got a new coaching staff, so that's kind of an adjustment too, right? Sometimes a little disorganized. I don't think it's a lack of discipline. I think it's just kind of getting a feel for, a new coach, probably a new coaching system, young guys, right? Putting them up there, but they're big guys. There's some big linemen and stuff. And so in the Bradley game, the final score didn't really reflect what the closest of the game. Bradley started out pretty quick. Kind of doing these over the middle 5-10 yard gains, running across the middle, which I think is very effective for them. And so it seemed we were making that kind of progress. Then we kind of switched over to more of a running game. And I think the issue is when you're running inside that box, right, you got to look at what you're running up against. And they had big boys. They weren't – I wouldn't say they were dominant in their defense. It's just when you have big guys up front that can fill the space, there's not a lot you got to do except for stand your ground if your offensive linemen aren't able to make the holes that you need. And when you have big, heavy-set guys, it makes it that much more difficult. It's just weight that you got to move. And so it was, it ended up being 7-0 going into almost the second half. Felt like if we could hold them there, come back, score in the second half would be good. Nate Murphy had a great about 85, 90-yard run, a return down to the 3. And unfortunately, Bradley did not capitalize on that. So, again, you're kind of looking at what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? Part of it is, are we exploiting them for, in the right plays, looking at what we're doing, making the adjustments. A lot of it too is just execution, right? Making sure your guys are doing what they're supposed to do. And so coming into the second half, they ended up scoring before the second half. It was down 14-0. And I think what happened is the offense couldn't really get things going last week. So the defense spent a lot of time coming in and a lot of time on the field. And as well as anybody else, if you spend a lot of time, one side or the other spends a lot of time on the field, in particular your defense, I think you get wore down after a while, right? And I think you're a little frustrated. And so if you're going 4 and out and defense is in there and they're just kind of grinding away, for, several minutes down to score, and then you run 4 and out and then you're back in on defense. I think what happened is it just got to the point where the defense was completely wore out and probably a little frustrated. I think there was a lot of frustration both from the coaching staff, I think, but also from the players. Certainly from the fans, there's always frustration. I always say, I said when I took my son down to Illinois Wesleyan for a game he was invited to, there was a lot of, I said, well, look at this. We've got about 75 coaches in the stand. He's like, really? I said, no, I just mean we have 75 people who think they're coaches, right? So you get a lot of opinions, a lot of thoughts, but it gets frustrating. I think with any team that, you think your team can compete, I think we can compete. We just didn't do that. I think it ended up being 33-7. Was not really reflective of the game. It was just a matter of, trying to find those right areas that you can capitalize on. And sometimes those areas where, I kind of felt they had a good linebacker, but I kind of felt we could, utilize that and expose that a little bit more. We've got some, I think, really quick, fast receivers that can get across that middle. Then you're dealing with a linebacker who's not going to be as quick as you're fast. As you get on the outside guys, your cornerbacks, your safeties, they're going to be pretty quick. So to beat them, you're going to have to be a bigger, which we are, but you got to muscle that a little bit off the line heading out. So I think getting across the middle was something that was effective. I think we got great running backs. When you talk about Nate Murphy and some of those guys are really, really good. And so we're just going to have to put all that stuff together this week, put this behind us. We've got, I think, 4 more games left. We got to win 3 out of the 4. That's a tall task, right? And we're looking forward to going to Lincoln Way Central on Friday. That will be the game that hopefully we can pull off. But we'll see, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Did you have any other games, Jordan, that you went over or were able to look at over the weekend?
Yeah, so I also checked out Providence Catholic taking on Marion Central Catholic, and that game was another nail-biter. It was another one of those games where, Providence Catholic kind of just took command of the game for the most part, and then probably the end of the third quarter or so, Marion Central Catholic just started opening up their passing game and score, and just keep on getting back in this game with their tall wide receivers. They had 2 wide receivers that are about 1'6'4", 6'5", and the other one's 6'4". So, they're really tall targets. They're deep threats. They can make those contested catches. And they ended up, the craziest part about this, Jeff, is with 0.2 of a second on their final drive, they got to the 1-yard line, got a touchdown with the QB sneak, and they're losing 35-33, so they have to go for a 2-point conversion with no time on the clock. and they did a Providence Catholic came out with an all-out blitz on the quarterback. Quarterback was able to get the ball off, but it was just a little too far away for his open target in the end zone, and that would have sent them into overtime. So they ended up losing that game. But what it showed is that Marion Central Catholic, when they're down big, they can come back, bring that team camaraderie, and make a team comeback with their offense, and their defense really stepped up as well, stopping Providence Catholic for 4 and outs to get them in the position to try and get back in this game, bring it to overtime.
Yeah, I think that's such an important thing for teams, team chemistry, team makeup. You're talking about being down and then kind of regrouping, coming back, creating that, that kind of drive, that cohesiveness that gets you to be able to pull yourself out of that hole. Because if you can do that, then any game that you play is a game you can win. And we kind of went through that. It was last game against Sandburg. Same thing. Come down. They were going to go for 2, right? I think you were there, right?
Yep.
And it was just again a play that just didn't develop quite the way Sandburg wanted it to be. And I think that may have been for the win. May have been for the tie. I don't remember. You got a better memory than me, young man. So, but it was another nail biter, a game that could go back and forth, and those are always the best games, right? I mean, you give kudos to the teams that blow out teams, but it's difficult, and I think important for us and was important for me was I spent some time with one of the coaches at Bradley, Coach Kubel, who turned out to be, I hadn't really had a chance to talk to him. What a wonderful, nice guy. I bet you we spent a good half an hour talking, just kind of getting to know him. This is during the sophomore game, and kind of asking them questions. One of the questions I had, and I think some of our parents ask, is why are we playing a Lincoln Way East, a Homewood Flossmoor, a Lockport that are, 8As? When you look at Lockport in particular, they're almost 4,000 kids, and we're 2,000. And what he explained to me that I didn't know, but I think is important, was that's one of the conference requirements, is that we have a red side and I think a blue side, whatever. I don't really care what the other side is because it's not our guys. But that other side's all 8As. And so the requirement is you have to play at least 3 crossover games. So our 7A side has to play over into that other side to be able to meet the needs of the conference. And so that's why we kind of get the Homewood Flossmoors, the Lockports, the Bolingbrookes, right? Those teams that are just big schools that, have a lot of talent to choose from. Me and Coach Cole were talking a couple of weeks ago and talking about the difference in size. And it's kind of like if you could take Bradley, shut down Kankakee, Mac, all those athletes, of course, and students come to one school, it would be a different, obviously it would probably push us up into 8A, but it would be a different story. And when you look at kind of what they've got at Kankakee, right? Kankakee's, I think in the top 5. I don't know where they're at this week for their class. And then Bishop Mac, they struggle a little bit, but they've got, and I think their numbers are low this year, but they've got like, 2 running backs, freshmen that are now sophomores that have some D1 offers, right?
Yep, you got Tony Phillips and Jaden Wright. You also have Colton Provost at wide receiver too.
Yeah, and I think the only thing, and again, I haven't had the opportunity. Of course, they play when we play. Haven't had the opportunity to see them. I'm not, a lot of people are either a Bradley lover and a Mac hater, or a Mac lover and Bradley hater. And probably the same thing with Kankakee. We used to have that all-city matchups to claim the all-city champions. We don't do that anymore. I think it's unfortunate. I wish really the powers that be could work a little bit closer together, kind of get on the same page. It's such a good rivalry. But I'm so happy for the schools and what they're doing. I'm disappointed that both our program and Mac's program is not where it should be. But from what I understand, their numbers are low. So those 2 running backs don't quite have the depth in the line to be able to help them out. They still do great work on the field, but it doesn't quite work that way all the time. And when your numbers are low, you're trying to do the best you can do with the talent you got. And that's, I think, when you talk about numbers being low, I think that's something that's pretty consistent throughout all the programs. I think within our conference, when they had an AD conference meeting that the athletic directors were all down in their football numbers except for Lockport. Lockport seemed to be the program that was really growing pretty high. So, but yeah, I think if you can get into a game and you've got that ability to recover from a loss, I think we have the ability to stay in it. And when you look at some of the games we played, as it goes on, it may get more and more, the hole may get deeper and deeper. That our team is out there doing that, but you have to have that kind of second engine that kicks in that pushes you to that point, whether it be offense, defense, or both. That gets you out of that and heads back in, and that's a special team. So kudos to those teams that can do that. And sometimes we've seen this when my daughter played, highly competitive softball. We could be playing great ball and then get on the field and we just don't play very good. So you don't know, and they're kids, right? So you don't know who's showing up today, right? And then when I say who, I don't mean individual players. Like, what team will be on the field today? Is it going to be that consistent team that can go out and win, that can get down and bounce back, or is it a team that just seems out of sync? And we're hoping through the next couple of weeks to pick up a win against Lincoln Way Central. We play Andrew. Of course, we play Lincoln Way East, our third crossover game, right? And everybody knows who Lincoln Way East is. They're big. When they closed down Lincoln Way North, they picked up a lot of folks that decided to go there. They've really got a lot of talent. I mean, you can't take anything away from the coaching staff and what they do there. So we're hopeful there. I'm hopeful, but I'm not foolish. But if I was going to put money on it, I would say the next two games we've got, again, I think we can win Lincoln Way East. I wouldn't bet on that game. I've been down that road with some other, not just Lincoln Way East, but some other programs. My daughter went to Bishop Mack, and we played Rochester. I wasn't putting money on that game either, but and it's a good thing I didn't. And then we play Stag, and I think we're comfortable with Stag, but you can never really overlook those guys because, again, you don't know who's going to show up. So what do you got on tap this week? Anything, or are you going to kind of take it easy and get – I know you're constantly either writing stories, going to games, reviewing films, highlight tapes. So maybe some time for you to take off and enjoy your time with your family or your significant other, right? I'm not going to get into your personal life, right? Your girlfriend or anything. But those things are really, really important. So what do you got on tap this week?
Yeah, so this week I'm going to my brother's football game. It's Piatone versus Streeter. And I'm just going to go watch it, not really going to be scouting that game because instead I'm going through all the film that's been sent to me this past week, all the DMs, notifications, things like that. And I'm going to put together kind of a Jordan's notebook, so to speak, highlighting class of 22, 23, 24, and 25, just try and help as many of these young men get their name out there. So that's kind of the process I'm doing right now. And it takes a little bit longer than, say, writing up top players of a football game because you have to go through all the film, analyze it, and then go through and figure out, which players should be on there with, things like that. And then being able to go back and recontact all the players, if they wanted to know kind of what your analysis was on that. So it just takes a decent amount of time. So that's what I'll be working on these next few days.
Well, and for anybody that's watching or that listens to this, the important thing about that is, I think certainly not saying anything you don't do is valuable, but I think probably the most valuable thing is those things where kids just don't get the recognition they deserve, right? And sometimes it just takes a little bit to be able to click them into that next level. And I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about our upcoming game and then kind of get back into, let's talk about those kids that I've seen that are kind of getting looks from our area. I'm proud. We tweeted out this week, the County Pulse podcast, that this player was, a player from our area. And I think, of course, I only have so much space, right, both from my physical capabilities, but also from a time perspective, that I try to concentrate heavily on Kankakee County and Iroquois County. And so when I see kids coming from there, it's a big deal. So I want to talk about that in a few minutes, but I want to talk a little bit about our game heading into into Friday against Lincoln Way Central. Lincoln Way Central is having a down year. The way I know this is one, kind of seeing their schedule, but a kid that went to Bradley, Joe Keller, is probably my son's best friend. He went to Bradley, and then he ended up going up north, and he went to Lincoln Way Central for a couple of years, but still kept in contact with us. Came down, stayed with us. I consider him like a second son, and he's had kind of a rough life, but he's a great kid. You would never know it by talking to him. And I was blessed to be able to meet, I guess I would call his mom and dad, that really raised him the last couple of years, got him on track, and kind of find out what he went through. And I went up to a Carthage game with my son. They invited him up to watch, I think it was a scrimmage. And so we went up there, wanted to see Joe and wanted to see the Carthage folks. They're interested in Grayson, and we're really, we're obviously happy and proud of that. They do a great job up there at Carthage College. And we went up there and talked to them. And his dad or stepdad was a coach there at Lincoln Way Central. And he kind of said, we're down this year, but and struggling a little bit. But at the end of the day, as I always say, it's a Lincoln Way team. I don't care if it's Lincoln Way Central, East, West. You can see them as a down team, but you just, again, good product, right? Good coaching, good kids are coming in. I don't know a lot about their players. You may know some of those players. I know one in particular, Jake Hinks, who has really been sending his tape in, getting stuff out. I talk to him. I try to help him get stuff out and really help the kids. That's kind of what we do, is we talk to kids about these are things you should do that are the basics for recruiting, right? How you put together your profile, all that stuff. We're by no means experts, right? But we're not dummies. And we just try to, I guess my best description for me is try to be a facilitator, right? How do I help them get on the radar screen? And Jake's been one of those kids that's reached out to me and is really looking for that. And he's getting some looks, getting some follows. And he's a playmaker at his position, and I think you'll see a lot of action from him. He seems to be all over the place, whether it be interceptions, whether it be tackles. Works in that secondary mode and is a really solid player coming into this. And another kid that I've kind of grown to really like and work with. And I think all the kids that I get to know, I have a love for them because I know what it's like to be in a position where you want to go to college. So when we kind of connect them back to what you're doing, Jordan, is that ability to take the time to review the tapes, to talk about them, to help them get on the radar screen. And, we're not saying this kid is the best. We're not saying you have to take this kid. But we think, and I'm not speaking for you, but at least I think, just take a look at kids, right? Take a look at kids and find out what they're doing. So I think coming into the Lincoln Way Central game this week, if we're executing like we can and should, that we can come away with a win against Lincoln Way Central. Again, I know Lincoln Way Central kids. I know a former Lincoln Way Central kid, Joe Keller, who's now playing at Carthage, and that was a great story. He was really getting no looks. I was heading into waiting on a liver transplant surgery, and my son said, "Hey, I want to go to this Carthage camp." He went up there, and he brought Joe along. And what was interesting was I just went through a major surgery, so we decided this well before I got the call that I was my donor liver had came in, and so I was coming out. I was a couple of days out of surgery, I think. Maybe a day out, and my wife's like, "Hey, this camp's going on, right?" And we're not there. We're at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, and I don't know. Do you think he should go? He's going to have to drive up to Kenosha all by himself. And I said, "Well, is Joe going?" They said, "Yeah." So he had been texting us, "Can I go? Can I go?" So we just decided. I don't remember a lot coming out of those couple of days out of a major surgery. I do remember that, and I said, just let them go. And they went. And around Christmas time, as I'm still recovering, because it's such a long recovery. But I was still in a lot of bad shape then, and Joe had called Grayson, and he was on FaceTime, and then Grayson gave me the phone, and he said, "Mr. Dexter, I just want to let you know that they've offered me a position on the team, and I'm going to be able to go to college and play." And for me, I cried. It's like your own kid, and we were just blessed because I didn't know if he was going to go. I said I'd pay it. Of course, his parents paid it. His step-parents paid it. He went up there, and I think with Joe, and I know it's kind of offshoot a little bit, but this kid has had a hodgepodge of things that have happened in his life, but people that are around him have supported him, and lastly, of course, had his stepmother and stepfather. In fact, I mentioned Jake Hinks. That's his stepbrother now. They took him in. They raised him. They got him on the right track. And I think we talked a lot that night when we were up there. That was just a lot of people that were around him that helped him through some really tough times. And as a kid, it's what you're going to be doing, Jordan. You're putting kids on the radar screen. He got on the radar screen. And he's playing, and I think he's like second on the depth chart. He may be even first now. He's a hardworking kid, a good kid. And I think that's when I look at Joe, and the reason why I talk so much about Joe is because that's what we're looking for kids, right? Kids that are out there that are going to work hard, that are good kids, that just want that opportunity to go to the next level. And we're giving them that exposure that maybe we're not getting in some of these areas that, get overlooked. And, with all due respect to the 5-star guys and D1 or bus guys that are going to go no matter what, or and in the Beijing metropolitan area, there was a lot of kids in a lot of areas, whether it be Bradley, Kankakee, Moment, Piatone, Mantino, Gilman, and Iroquois West that can just flat out play, and they've got a place. And so I think that's going to be really the important thing for us as we go along. So I'm really excited to see what you're doing. I'm still hoping I can get you down here. Maybe the last game, or the second to last game. Our last game is against Lincoln East, so I wouldn't tell you to come down for that. But our senior game, we're going to have. We're going to play Stag. Again, we're comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with that game. I can't say the kids are, the coaches are, but I'm comfortable with that. But would love to get you down and take a look at the kids. It's always an emotional night because it's our last home game, I believe, and it's the last time those seniors will be on the field. And last year it was emotional for those kids. I think you remember being down on the field interviewing some of the kids, and it's emotional for them. They get pretty worked up, and rightfully so. Their high school seasons are over, so we're coming to that point. Didn't really hit me, but now it's hit me like this is it for these boys. And you guys, especially in the scouting world, have moved into 2023s, 2024s, and even probably some 2025s. Some guys have already looked there. My son told me there was a 2026 or 2027 kid who is identified as the grade school, I don't know what you want to call it, #1 prospect in the country. I think it's a little ridiculous. I'm not taking anything away from that young man, but I don't think you can start looking that low. I want them to stay in the high school level, let those kids and try to let them play as much as they can without this additional pressure of playing at college. So, so if you can make it down sometime, even if I got to come up and drag you away from doing the reports, I'm going to try to get you down here, because after that, you can always come down. But, we'll probably, if Grayson is blessed enough to, play in college, we'll probably be heading somewhere on a Friday night for a Saturday game. So we'd love to have you down, man, and talk a little bit more in depth, if you could, Jordan, about what you're going to be doing as far as this kind of this review of these kids and what you're putting together, so everybody can be looking forward to it.
Yeah, so it's going to be broken down by each class with 22s, 23s, 24s, and 25s based off of all the film that was sent my way and kind of different stats, things like that were also sent my way as well. And then going over the film, reviewing it, kind of talking about the individual strengths, trying to say, for example, a running back, say this running back has a good change of direction, they're able to burst through the line of scrimmage, stuff like that, more on kind of a technical scouting side, as opposed to like, oh, he has a big frame and he can run over people. So it's kind of a little bit more in depth and kind of a generalized type of review. So then when people are able to read it, they're able to get a better understanding of how their skills are going to transition over to the next level. And the other good thing about it is that it's also incorporating in JV film for those 25s and 24s if they're on JV, to where it won't be as in depth because it is in varsity film, but it gives them an outlet to kind of get their names out there, posting whatever stats they have and saying, well, this is on JV film and this is what they can do on JV. So it's going to be interesting to see how they develop this year and over the summer into varsity season next year, and just kind of stuff like that, to where it's able to kickstart putting them on other people's radars since they are so young.
Yeah, I think what's important for student athletes to know playing football is when you talk about clicking over to varsity and stuff. I talk to some parents, and I don't think they and kudos to them. They don't have college football on the radar screen. Neither does their son. But at some point, for a lot of athletes, it clicks, and I'm always afraid it's going to click too late. So I don't think it's ever too late to do it, but I also don't think it's too early. I think freshman year, you get your film together after the end of the year, put it out, kind of get to understand Twitter, know how it should be properly set up, identify your schools. We talked about this, even if it's a 5-hour radius from your house. Kind of look at those, get the D1, D2, D3s, NAIA schools, and really just kind of start looking and have that expectation of maybe a D1 comes calling, but maybe an NAIA comes. And always remember, the higher you go, the more the competition. You may be big man on campus, but, the higher level you go, there's going to be a lot more guys that are big men on campus. And I mean big, right? Both from a talent perspective and just a size perspective. So yeah. I always encourage kids, pick the school that you obviously that has the area you want to go into, the degree that you're looking for, where you see yourself going for a career. But, if you want to play football, also find that school, that combination of academics and where you can go for playing, right? There's no sense in my mind, you can go to a high-level D1 school, and if you're comfortable with not playing, that's good for you, and that's good for your parents and everything. But if you have that combination, those are two separate paths you got to look at. But eventually they come together, and I think part of it is too. You may go. My son's went to different places, and he's got some schools like it just feels right. Yeah. So then you say, hey, is this a program where he can get some playing time in? Or is he going to have to sit for 3, maybe even all 4 years? And does it meet you academically where you need to be? And so I think the sooner you can kind of start that exploring, I think the better. We've seen some seniors that are late in the game, right? We've seen it. We've had discussions about that where not only them, but their coaches are like, we'll talk about it after their senior season. The problem is if they're D1 players, it becomes very, very difficult after their senior season, especially during that COVID period, right? Because they're playing in the spring. Now you've lost all that between the end of November, right, going in December, January, February. Now you're playing in the spring. And we've seen that almost too late. Not that those players don't end up going where they want to go, but if they're really interested in going D1 and they've got that talent, we want to give them that opportunity by kind of what you're doing, what we try to expose to them, right? How do you do things? We're not doing it for them. We're just giving them, again, some type of facility, right? Some type of facilitator, I should say, that's going to move forward with this. And that's what you do. That's kind of what I do. I spend time talking with parents and players, either online like this or over the phone, conference calls, talking about that. So, when you get to that point and you get done with your stuff and getting that, make sure, obviously you always tag me in, make sure we get that stuff out, get out to players because I think it's important. But I want to kind of come back a little bit to what I'm seeing in this area. And I'm so happy for our schools and our players, our coaches. We've got kids that are interested, they've got offers from, D1 schools, Tennessee, Illinois, Iowa, you name it, they've got it. And then you get down into when you can move off of those schools of Illinois and Iowa and Tennessee and Florida Atlantic and Syracuse, like the guys do over at Bishop Mack. You get into a lot of the schools that I think really fit well here at this point for a lot of kids is our NAIA, right? D3, D2 schools. So I want to give a shout out to some of those schools that are really looking at our kids both here and a little bit farther north and south. Those are, as I mentioned earlier, Syracuse, Florida Atlantic. We're getting down into West Virginia. It's like a blue state college. I don't have it in front of me. Indiana Wesleyan, Illinois Wesleyan, Iowa Wesleyan, Dakota State University. We're not talking South Dakota or North Dakota. That's a D2 program that's looking here for our kids. Augustana fits in. Carthage fits in. Ripon fits in. You can just name a whole host. Another D2 that's looking in our area is Upper Iowa. So some of these names are names that we may not know or that players and parents may not know, but you really need to take the time to look at them. We get a good idea of D3s around here. Lake Forest is another one, right? We know Lake Forest College, great program, great academics, great community. And we know those because D3s are pretty prominent here. D2s are not. And so you have to look at those, and D2s are very unique. A lot of times they're big schools in small towns, right? So you have to adjust for that. But, for example, this weekend we're heading to Upper Iowa for a game. $10 million stadium, beautiful stadium. 4,000, I think, kids go there. The population is about 1,100, right? That's the town. So it's not a big town. So if you're not looking to be in a small town, maybe not for you, but also small towns, especially for our kids around here, are usually kind of what they like. They like filling that small town. But then there's great schools like, Illinois Wesleyan. Illinois Wesleyan's in the back yard of Illinois State. You get that small town, small school feel, and a big college town. Indiana Wesleyan's kind of out in the middle of Indiana, but the facilities are phenomenal. The coaches are phenomenal. The program's phenomenal, right? So there's all these things you need to evaluate. But I am so excited from, D1 down to NAIA, right? I'll throw in another D3. Culver Stockton's another one in Missouri that's looking. Knox, right? Knox is looking. Monmouth, another school. McKendree. These are all the names that have come to me from players who said, this is a coach that's talking to me. And if I had all their names here, I would list those coaches out. Some of them I do know. But that's kind of what's happening in this area, man. And that's what's so great about this is that the more we give these kids opportunities, the more schools start saying, hey, let me look in that kind of central part of Illinois. And this should happen in every community, in every state. These small town kids are going and, we're a town of Bradley, Bourbonnais. Bradley's 11,000. I don't know, 12,000. Bourbonnais is probably the same, maybe a little bit less. Kankee's less than 30,000. These kids can play, and we want them to play. We want them to get a great education because I think for the vast majority of them, their career is going to end after college, right? It's always, and whether some of us are lucky, and we've had kids that, a long time ago, they've come out of here that have played pro, right? Ted Peterson Moments played for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Terry Bradshaw and the greats, right? You've got some guys that went to Bishop Mack that played for the Colts. It can happen. But their career ended at some time too. So we want to make sure that they're getting into programs, not just because they can play, but also academically. And I'm so pleased and blessed that you're going to be doing this stuff, that getting it out there. So the more I can help, let me know. I know Big Pete's a big help. Clint Cosgrove's a big help. Brian Alt's a big help. And both of those guys, both Clint and Brian, I've got an interview from 5 months ago, I think, from Clint. I've got to get up. And he caught me right before I got the CMV, which put me down for 2 months or so. But I've got to get that up. And then Brian, we set up something about the same time to do it when we're doing Clint. And so I owe both of those guys an apology, but I also then have to get Brian in here for an interview and get Clint's stuff up. And, as you've heard, Clint's moved on from Prep Nationals over to Yahoo and Rivals. So kudos to him. When I interviewed him, couldn't be a nicer guy, and Brian's the same way. So I'm going to circle back around those guys because those guys help us, right? They do help us, and you get into their databases. And so I'm excited, man, and what you're doing is going to be helpful for us. So I think it's an exciting time for kids that watch this, kids that follow you, follow me, to look for your stuff coming out. get on your radar screen. We're going to be coming up. Our seniors are going to be done. They're going to be getting lots of offers. I think it's the first Wednesday in February. They'll probably commit. I don't know if there'll be any early signings, but typically February is when it happens. But you guys will start then with your Prep Red Zone camps, and I think it's important that kids get in there and do that and kind of get on your radar screen, right? Because they got to get on your radar screen to help get on the coach's radar screen. I mean, it's not a necessity, but any way you can help yourself, you've got to do it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So you probably don't have an idea of camps at this point, right? Prep Red Zone probably hasn't projected those out, but talk a little bit last year where you kind of had camps, some of the different areas you had them here in the Midwest, if you know.
Yeah, so at the moment, we don't know when we're going to hold our camps. It's looking like it might be more towards like May and June, where we're going to hold a majority of our camps. In the Midwest, we weren't able to host any camps during the springtime and in the summer in Illinois because of their COVID restrictions. So we ended up hosting 2 in Indiana, 1 down in Indianapolis for the Indiana kids, and then 1 in Crown Point, Indiana, which is closer to the border of Illinois, for Indiana kids and Illinois kids kind of get to that one. We have 1 up in Wisconsin, I believe. Maybe had 1 in Iowa, and kind of. They're all run in a similar way of doing, combine testing your 40, 5, 10, 5, broad jump. And then from that going into position specific drills to kind of see how you are, during doing certain drills for your position. And then at the very end, you go into one-on-ones, which is, to me, it's the funnest part to watch because you get to see offense, defensive linemen getting after it in the trenches. You get to see wide receiver versus DB one-on-one. You get to see how a quarterback is able to make a throw in a tight window. All these different things that get you a better idea of how a prospect is. And the coolest thing about it all is that we have college coaches there to evaluate you while you're there too, which is, to me, that's an important thing. Like, if you don't want to come to ours, that's completely fine. But just make sure whatever camp you do go to has those college coaches there.
Yeah, I agree. And we've experienced it. We went to your Prep Red Zone. Of course, we went to other camps too. You guys have certain camps, other people have, and I would encourage you to look at some of those camps. I think Prep Red Zone is important. I think EFT with Edgy Tim does some good stuff. I think Boom Football combined with those guys trying to do stuff, I think those are important. Fist football. They do a lot of great things and do a lot of quality taping of stuff. So I think there's some good camps. And we're going to, as the season progresses and we get out of this, we're going to be talking, me and you, and this is a surprise to you, but we'll be talking about trying to get out a little bit more, condensing our seminar, our conferences. But I'd like to get out a little bit, maybe travel a little bit, get some places, try to keep that maybe to an hour, and then, kind of get people really focused on doing the right thing. I'd love to get south if we can get some interest down in the Iroquois counties, those kind of things, the Centrals, the Iroquois West. Some of those kids already know how to do this, but there's a lot of kids that don't. Get up a little bit to the west of us, even if it's outside Kankakee County, I'm good with that. A little bit farther north, get into the Piatone, Manteno area, those kind of things, and just kind of hold a conference, rent the place, have people in, give them as much information as we can. But I think the first time we did it, I gave them too much information. It was only about 100 slides. But I promised you, and I promised my wife and myself, as I kick myself in the butt, that we're going to cut it down. And I'll give you more time to talk. I like to talk, but certainly want to get you focused and doing stuff because you do a lot of good stuff. And then as things settle down, depending on where next year takes us, as far as my son playing football, if it's not too far away, maybe me and you can do some traveling to some Friday night football games and just get the grind, man. Because, I was always a football fan, but I think when you get into high school football, and certainly I've got personal interest. I've got a son that plays. You got personal interest. You played, but you've got a brother that plays. Man, they get after it, brother. They just get after it at high school levels, and I love it. It's kind of watching them blossom, from freshman year going into sophomore and then junior, senior. They seem to – I just looked at my son, and I'd taken a picture when we were up in March up to Carthage College, and I went back and looked at that picture. I said, that was in April of this year. He looks like a little boy. Now he's just filling out. It's like he's gotten huge, right? And so seeing him kind of, this is my kid I see every day, but going back and looking at these things, I love it, man. I love these kids. Even if I haven't met them, I love them because I want them to have the best opportunity. And I want mom and dad to be able to afford it. And hopefully these colleges throw a lot of money at them and make it as easy as possible financially for them so they can go and play for great programs, whether it be NAIA, D3, D2, D1, and then get a great education. And then hopefully come back into our communities and make our communities better, right? That's kind of our goal, man. So I'm super excited for you. I'm still going to tell you, get down here for Stag game, right? That'll be our last game. I'd love to see you down here. I don't know what you got planned. Try to tell mom and dad, no birthdays. Tell your girlfriend we can't go out that night. Tell them you got a date with Jeff at the Bradley Bourbonnais Stag game, or bring her along. I'll buy her something from the concession stand. So
is that you said that's week 8, right?
What's that?
Is that week 8?
Yeah, week 8. Yep, we're in 9 weeks.
I'm gonna be out in Chicago to watch Taft take on Whitney Young. So I won't be
on week 8.
Yeah.
So you're not coming here?
You got a playoff game? I'll be there for that one.
Well, from your lips to God's ear, brother, I can tell you that right now. So hopefully, yeah, maybe a playoff game. I would love it, but I don't know. Taft, you're going to the Taft what game?
Taft versus Whitney Young.
Okay. I've heard of them, but they're not our school. Okay, that's why they're not Bradley Stag. I don't know what to tell you. No, well, that sucks. So, but you can at least maybe look at it online. So I just like getting you down here and spending some time with you, brother. But again, I want to thank you for what you do. Keep us updated. Send out some teasers about what's coming out. We'll get them out to everybody. I'm having a meeting tonight. Not a meeting. My son's having everybody over to watch film. So we're going to cook hot dogs and hamburgers and probably have 20, 25 kids. They're going to wipe me out of all my food and all my drink. But we're going to talk a little bit about that, right? And kind of making sure they're getting on everybody's radar screen and making sure they're filling out your guys' stuff and your player index, filling out Clint and Brian's stuff. And, of course, Big Pete, got to get stuff to him, and kudos to him and what he does. So, yeah, man, I'm excited. So send me out some teasers. In fact, when we get offline here, send me some stuff so I can talk to the kids tonight about what's coming up from Prep Red Zone. But I appreciate your time, man. And I'm sad. I'm going to have to break the news to the players tonight and to my wife that Jordan's not coming down week 8. But we're going to forgive you for that. But, when you do show up, we're going to give you the what for. So, no. Hey, well, good luck to you, man. And enjoy your brother's game. Another kid I've met, I really, really love. And tell them to get after it, man. I'm looking forward to hearing great things about him.
As always, thank you for having me on here.
Hey, no problem, man. And we'll talk to you soon.